You're listening to The Moth of Glen, Mailey. The waiting took longer than she expected. Planted on the old, creaky porch swing, Orla settled down among the dusty cushions and refused to remove her sore body. A hazy, rippling heat settled over the property, bringing out the tiny gnats who sat in a small cloud over the tall grass, highlighted only where their wingtips caught the sun. Anya came around from below the porch and sat poised, her tail swishing back and forth. She waited for a moment where the swing drew close to jump on it, her decrepit body settling into the cushions at the far side of the bench. Orla cast her eyes around the porch, a place she sat in countless times over her lifetime. Shannon's ashtrays, filled with Virginia Slims, sat scattered all over the length of the porch. Her grandma liked to stand at the far corner and look out over the rolling tall grass of the property, a thin cigarette perched over her lip. Shannon always liked to keep one beady eye on the tree line. Orla always assumed it was because she was thinking, piecing together some invisible knowledge beyond the eye line. Now, she wasn't so sure. Her mind turned over the image of Rabbit like a smooth river rock. So much about the memory of falling into the stream felt like tugging on a dusty old drawstring, one that unraveled the structure of what felt normal around her. An ancient patch of burlap coming undone and disintegrating in her grasp. After so many years of poking fun at the aunties and uncles for being wary of every sideways shadow on the property, she was finally starting to realize what they all knew. Something wasn't right with this place. It wasn't the house, but the land itself. There was a feral energy here, as old as the mountains themselves. The realization began to settle in with a tickling sort of feeling along her skull. Maybe Bobby and the rest of the family weren't cold in their decision to leave Shannon behind in the holler. In fact, many of the aunties and uncles had asked Shannon to move in with them so they could stop making the blasted trip out to the family property. But she had always refused. Her mother and Bobby had always asked her so many times, why? But Shannon simply shook her head and said, time and again, I have things to tend to here. No one had ever gotten a detail more from her after that. Now, Orla was beginning to think that maybe Shannon was keeping it all in check, whatever it was. She didn't have any idea what Shannon would even be doing to keep something like what had come for her at bay. But she did know that in all the years she'd spent while Shannon was here, these things simply hadn't happened. She'd never, even after falling into the stream, ever felt like the property was ever a dangerous place. It had always felt like a preserved piece of her childhood, a place somehow buffeted against time. Now that Shannon wasn't here, it all felt so much bigger than her. In some ways, that struck her as funny. She'd come back to Shannon's cabin and Glen Mailey to get away from feeling insignificant, to escape New York where she'd grown used to feeling immensely small quite often. It was a feeling that always made her remember an exhibit at the Guggenheim years back. 10,000 carpenter ants locked behind glass, the walls of the room teeming with tiny movement. What had stuck with her even then was the image of the dead ants piling at the bottom of these tunnels, and how the remaining ants clambered over their bodies with ease, treating their dead like just one more unremarkable organic obstacle. She remembered then the dread that rose in her craw, the realization that she'd attended a museum to watch the brutal churn of the city play out in miniature. A cold reminder of scale that made her feel insignificant, removed from the sense of wonder and feeling humbled by the sight of soaring mountains or ancient, lichen-covered trees she'd grown up with. But now, sitting in the middle of one of the world's oldest set of mountains, she felt that sense of scale and insignificance creeping back. It wasn't the close run-in she'd had with the creature that stole faces that scared her the most, but whatever had managed to snap that creature in two and drag her out into the rambling trees. The terror sat with her still, the memory of thinking she'd been staring into the blank darkness of night only to see that darkness move, belonging to a shape that was much taller and wider than she'd expected. That sudden, close-quarters run-in with size and scale in a darkness she could not make out. That made her stomach queasy. For all she knew, there were more out there. Maybe this time she'd been spared out of stupid sheer luck, a ruthless calculation of odds by something that didn't reason like any animal she knew. The hairs on her arms stood on end when she thought about Rabbit. She was still out there, somewhere in the tall grass. Not only had she managed to evade the other creatures here, but she'd also managed to avoid being snatched up by Anya. She couldn't have been any bigger than the mean old cat herself. No, that didn't seem to feel quite right either. Orla reached out to scratch the cat underneath the chin and sighed as she watched the old bag of bones start to settle down into a soft sleep. Without the cat's grouchy old owner, both Orla and the cat were on their own. There was no one to talk her through this one, no calmer, wizened head to turn to. That left Orla feeling strangely naked, unprotected. Even in the cold encasement of concrete that was in New York, Orla had never felt alone, never for a moment. She knew that Shannon was just a text or a phone call away. The old woman had prepared her for seemingly everything. A flat tire out in the country road, scaring a bear off the property, how to fix a weak sauce, but she'd never prepared her for this. She ran her hand over Anya's coat yet again and felt an exhaustion overtake her. She just needed to rest her swollen eyes for just a moment. As she did, she felt a thicker curtain of darkness settle behind her eyelids, her body feeling heavy. A strange sleep took her, pulling her into a ragged black riptide, half consciousness. No dreams came to her, simply a feeling of physical pressure, like the press of the wind, gusts and eddies swirling around her in the limitless dark. The darkest of them buffeting her with a warm, hot air, like a presence. A movement in the dark shifted in the velvet black of her sightless sight. She jerked back, hurtling through empty space. When she woke, she felt like being dumped back into her own body, as if from a great height. When she opened her eyes again and could get her aching head to work, she noticed with a nauseous lurch that it was night. The second thing she noticed was that the ribbon tied around the porch post was gone. Orla sat up on the porch swing, looking for the cat, who also seemed to be gone. She opened her mouth to shout for the cat and then closed it promptly, her eyes adjusting to the dark, scanning the inscrutable tangle of the tree line. It had begun to rain, sparse raindrops from the heavy, humid clouds above. But the raindrops were fat and slow, taking their time to splash down onto the grass and dirt below. The field beyond the back porch smelled like electricity and the verdant green earth. Her eyes unfocused as she stared into the tree line warily, her gaze dancing along the pitter-patter of the rain on the still warm ground. That's when she noticed the porch. Wet footprints at the porch stairs where the ribbon was tied. Her heart stuttered as her eyes followed the watery footprints, trailing into the porch and then stopping at the swing. Orla jumped when she saw drying drops of water on her pant leg and shirt. Her hand brushed against something on the bench cushion, curling around the feeling. The brush of soft fabric against her fingers. She looked down into her open hand and found the ribbon slightly damp from the rain. Wet plops of rain fell around the porch, but Orla couldn't hear any of it over how hard her heart was beating. She grabbed the ribbon and stood up, pulled by instinct to the lip of the porch, right before the soft wall of water and the woods beyond. Her eyes scanned the tree line again, and then she saw it. The same thing she'd seen when she searched that first rainy night here for the blasted cat. 2 glowing eyes in the middle distance of the woods. Forward-facing eyes. Orla's skin bloomed with goosebumps. It was a swelteringly hot night tonight, but she felt chilled down to the very meat of her. Then, movement. Drawing closer to the threshold between the forest and the field. A silhouette that began to manifest itself around the glowing set of red eyes. A tall, long silhouette, shifting like fog as raindrops hit its form, its outline seeming to blur when hit by the rain and then reform itself. The form spilled over the tall grass of the field, its outline vaguely humanoid but long, the inky black figure shifting as it moved forward like a dark liquid encased in an opaque glass. Orla shuddered as the figure made its way towards her in the field, knowing without a doubt that this was the shape of darkness she'd seen last night, the creature that had snapped another monster in two. She began to make peace with the inevitability of death. There was no way to outrun something of its size and strength. It was just a question now of how much it would all hurt before her consciousness would be blotted out entirely. It was funny, really. Coming out here to Glen Mailey was supposed to be her recalibration, her moment of nostalgic peace with the only place that always felt safe to her. Instead, Orla had miscalculated, come to the one place where nothing could possibly exist to guarantee her safety in a situation like this. Bad luck of the draw, she guessed. The figure drew near, just a few paces away now, shifting slowly, unhurriedly, through the grass that did not seem to bend around it. She took a steadying breath and stared at her death head-on the way she imagined Shannon would. Shannon would have known what to do, she was sure. The ink-black shape then paused at the bottom of the porch stairs. The shape of it no more materialized up close than it was from far away, like someone had dropped a long sheet of slightly opaque fabric in front of her. The silhouette of the thing no more tangible than a hot breath on a cold day. The red eyes stared up at her from the bottom of the porch stairs, a deep, luminous scarlet, unblinking voids that simply watched her. Then, the shape seemed to fold away at the sides, bending and sliding away in the darkness. The obscurity fell away, and Orla felt her heart stop. Her body, before she could stop herself, tore down the rest of the porch stairs, closing the distance. The figure moved too, faster than she'd anticipated, and she felt herself slide downwards on the wet porch stairs, pinned between them and the red-eyed creature. Instead of screaming this time, however, she felt her arms reach out, grabbing desperately for the figure above her. The creature embraced her back, holding her close with surprising strength. Orla felt her tear-soaked cheeks press against the soft, white, downy fur, and she tried to catch her breath, hiccuping. The scent, so nostalgic it hurt. Dried grass, baked by the summer sun, crushed between the heels of one's palm. Oak moss and lichen. The fragrant honeyed smell of white clover. She felt her body allow herself to cry, letting each wave of relief and dissolving fear roll over her. As she did, she felt hands smooth over her shoulders, her hair, her face, soothing her. The hands slowly took the ribbon from her, wrapping it gently around her wrist and tying it off with a clean knot. I tried to tell you on the days that I could come. Her voice was like the soft beat of wings. Orla's gaze found Rabbit's huge scarlet eyes, surrounded by delicate white eyelashes. Her hair, loose all around them, was the color of a moonlit spiderweb. She was a strange woman that was equal parts feral and elegant, long limbs and disquieting liquid movement. A beautiful animal that you were never meant to see this up close. "You're not a rabbit," Orla said breathlessly, touching her face, and the sheer curtain of Rabbit's luminous wings draped around them to block the rain. Thick raindrops splashed against her wings, refracting the moonlight wherever the water landed. Even from here, she could see their texture was glossy, like delicate flower petals. The moth she'd found on the porch all those years ago, silver-white glimpses of fur through the tall grass, the slender arms that had pulled her out of the creek. "You're in charge of looking after the steward here of this land." Rabbit finished her sentence. "It doesn't matter so much what my name is." "She's not here. I can't find Shannon," Orla said, her face falling. Rabbit gave her a pained look, with her long, pale face and bottomless red eyes. Orla felt her bottom lip quiver as the truth dawned on her, knowing that, in some way, she'd known for a while now. She's not coming back, is she? Rabbit's white eyelashes swept her cheeks, her eyes dropping downwards, unable to meet hers. After a while, her gaze rose again to meet Orla's. She felt Rabbit swipe away the tears on her wet cheeks, her touch feather soft, a surprising amount of gentleness from a creature she'd watched tear something apart. Her hand raised Orla's chin, studying her face for a moment before she spoke again. it's very important that you start lighting the lantern again. Thank you so very much for sticking through the series with us. Glen Mailey has been a joy to share with you, and I can't wait to show you what's next. I'm very happy to keep making projects that challenge me and push me even harder to make more compelling work that you enjoy. There are a lot of ways to help support the series if you're feeling like it. You can rate and share on Spotify. Glen Mailey's also on YouTube, so you can drop us a like or a comment if that's your preferred listening spot. You can also support us on patreon.com/c/yeyankee, where you can also see the series art, behind the scenes, and receive a shout out on our audios. An incredible thank you to our patrons Cheyenne Summers, Ludmila Massovich, Jeff Jacobus, Chase Wassenar, and Mike Miley for their continued and unwavering support. We absolutely could not do it without you, and I'm so happy to complete yet another series that you get to enjoy. Thank you again, and remember, always keep the light with you.